Amid hopes of a ceasefire deal in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the deal should allow Israel to resume fighting until its objectives are met. And this comes after Hamas approved a U.S. proposal for a phased ceasefire deal, dropping a key demand for a complete end to the war. However, Hamas still wants quote-unquote written guarantees from mediators that Israel will continue to negotiate a permanent ceasefire deal once the first phase goes into effect. The apparent compromise was expected to deliver the first pause in fighting since November, set the stage for further talks on ending the war and free Israeli hostages held in Gaza. After Hamas's statement, talks over the U.S. plan were expected to restart, and 5 days after the approval, Hamas's officials have said that they are awaiting Israel's response. Netanyahu was scheduled to hold consultations on Sunday on the next few steps, but his statement has hindered the deal's momentum yet again. The Prime Minister has said that the plan that has been agreed to by Israel will allow the return of hostages without infringing on their objectives of the war. Israel says Hamas is still holding about 120 hostages, about a third of them now thought to be dead, and calls for their return and have continued to intensify. As Sunday marked 9 months since the start of the war, that was on October 7th last year, thousands of Israeli protesters gathered outside Netanyahu's private home in Jerusalem. Another protest was held on the main highway in Tel Aviv. Waving banners and flags, the protesters demanded that Prime Minister accepts the ceasefire deal. They also called for fresh elections right after the deal.
We came here today to get our voices heard. We want to say that we want our brothers and sisters that are hostage in Gaza back home. We want this crazy, insane war to end. We want elections now, so we have a new leadership that really cares about us.
Meanwhile, there has been no let-up in the offensive in Gaza. Israeli forces have issued new evacuation orders in several districts of Gaza City, and the move has led to the displacement of dozens of families. And to tell us the latest, our correspondent Jody Cohen is joining us live from Ra'anana, Israel. Jody, good to see you. Israel is yet to respond to the ceasefire plan. Where do things stand as of now?
Hi, Ananya. So yes, Hamas offered a counter-proposal to Israel's proposal for a hostage truce deal. And in response, Netanyahu has issued a list of what he said are non-negotiable demands. And these include a guarantee that Israel could resume fighting if necessary to achieve its war goals. So that is, number one, the return of the 120 Israeli hostages. 2, that Hamas is no longer in power, and 3, that there's no threat to Israel on its Gaza border. Netanyahu also said, for example, that the deal must not allow for the smuggling of weapons from Egypt into Gaza or the return of thousands of armed terrorists to northern Gaza. Now, Netanyahu's principles have highlighted the gaps in the Israeli and Hamas sides. And with talks set to start this week in Egypt and Qatar, some protesters and the opposition in Israel have accused Netanyahu of trying to stall the talks. An Israeli official has suggested that there are still gaps between Israel and Hamas's positions, but that all sides are expected to step up negotiation efforts in the coming days.
Right, Jody, it has been 9 months since the war started, and protesters also took to the streets on Sunday as well across the country. What is the situation like in the country?
Right, so as you said, it's 9 months since the hostages have been taken, including Kfir Bibas, who is the youngest hostage. He was just 9 months old when he was taken, and he would be 18 months old now. And actually today marks officially the fact that he has spent longer in captivity in Gaza than in freedom in Israel. And the big protests we saw at the weekend highlighted this, with many people calling for elections and also for the government to do everything possible to agree to a hostage truce deal. Now, the atmosphere 9 months on, I would say, is still one of unity when it comes to wanting to defeat Hamas. According to polls, most people support the hostage truce deal, but there's no consensus on holding elections now during wartime. Remember, thousands of families have been directly affected by having lost a family member either on the 7th of October or in the fighting, and tens of thousands of families have been displaced in the south and north of Israel, and every community in the country has been the target of rocket fire. So the whole of Israel, as well as no doubt Gaza and Lebanon too, will be watching closely to see how the negotiations develop this week.
All right, Jody, thank you so much for getting us all those updates from Renana.